Welcome to Behind the Scenes. This show is got one word description, Nana, N-A-N-A. And we're glad you tuned in to catch the show. Our guest is going to be, and is, Bob Gillis. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charlie.
Glad to have you here.
Good to be here, thank you.
And we're going to talk about Nana. And you've written a book. And I have a copy, but I haven't read it yet. And in general, I don't like, trying to prepare for a show. I'd much rather just come on and here we go.
Okay.
Okay? And so if we can, I think it'd be good if we can kind of zoom in on it. Do you want to just maybe hold it right up to...
Sure. Can do that right to this camera here?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right. Nana by Robert Gillis. Okay, I think we've got it.
I think we have it, yep.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, so we'll go on. So you wrote this book.
I did.
And just reading a little bit of what's on the back page, which is always, the kind of thing you want to do. Somebody picks up the book, instead of trying to leaf through the pages, they can kind of get a feeling for what the book is all about. Nana was a very special person in your life.
Yes.
And I presume also where she lived, and the home might have been a very special place for you too. And I get the feeling that maybe Nana not only provided a framework of living to you one way or the other, from the conversations and that you've had, and maybe some of the inputs that she's given you over the years. And also, one thing I'm aware of is that when the seniors at the Council on Aging have a special event and there's some food to be given out, Bob Gillis is there. And I try to translate that and say, I think that might have something to do with Nana too.
It does.
Your
it
liking
does.
and respect for seniors. So why don't we get started? You tell us what motivated you to write the book?
What happened was Nana died. Nana died a few days shy of my 29th birthday. She had had a stroke in August of '93, and she passed away November 16th of '93. And I used to visit Nana every day. When we lived in Dorchester, we lived just about a block away from Nana. It's different than here in Foxboro.
So it's walkable.
Oh, very walkable. So I started visiting her every day when I was 5 years old.
Really?
Yeah, and it was a point I remember when I was around 11 or 12, I was sick, I missed a day, and I was thinking how unusual that was to not visit Nana, and I was still only about 11 or 12. Excuse me. It became a regular thing, and in the early days it was just to drop off a newspaper, say hi, and go home. But as I got older, and as my dad's cancer developed, and I started assuming more responsibilities of the house, and as she got older, the relationship changed a lot. I started sticking around a lot more. I started listening to the stories. I started writing them down. I started to get very interested in the family history. I started spending a lot of time with her. Taking her places, taking her to visit her sister in Maryland, and we became very, very close over the years. And up to around the time I met my wife in 1990, I was still visiting Nana nearly every day. So what happened was Nana went into a rest home, a very good rest home, in 1992. She'd had a fall and she couldn't take care of herself anymore. And she flourished there. That was at St. Joseph's in Dorchester, and she did very well. But in August of the following year, she had a stroke. And after about a week or so, it pretty much left her comatose. And now, mercifully, she passed away only about 3 months later. She didn't linger too long. She didn't suffer. The thing was, I fell apart. I was 29 years old, and all of a sudden, I didn't have anywhere to be at nighttime. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been, with my wife Susan,
sure,
for 16 years, but by that I meant there was no one who relied on me to come in and make dinner.
Somewhat obligatory that you had to be there.
Sure, it was like the family responsibility, and I hated it. I hated coming home to not having to go to Dorchester to see her, not having to go, and I've been writing all my life, and I just started. Literally one day, I opened a file on the computer and I just started jotting down things I wanted to remember. Little stories she told me, the anecdotes, because I realized over time I was going to start forgetting them. And what happened was I kept writing because I was grieving. I totally fell apart in 1994.
So this was an outlet for the grieving.
Very much so. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was incredibly therapeutic. And by, 2 or 3 years later, I had a book. And it was funny, what happened was it basically sat on the computer for another couple of years. I was doing all my other things, was, doing the reporter column and
Sure.
my regular job as a computer guy. But there were two things that actually spurred this book to its publication. And the first is my wife, Susan. She had been pushing me for a long time saying, you've got a great story here. You need to publish this. And I wanted to, but I really didn't know how. And for Christmas one year, she even got me this wonderful, how to publish your book package. But the real kick in the pants, and I was going to say something else, but we're on television, even cable. The real kick in the pants was Jack Othlet, who many people in town know. And I was talking to Jack one time, I think it was Family Night or something like that, and he was writing a book. He was in the process of writing a book about World War II veterans. And they're dying at an alarming rate. But what's worse is their stories aren't being told. So Jack wanted to devote this new book to getting those untold stories on paper out into the public before these people died. And I went home that night, and I told Jack this later, I said, I've got one of those. I've got one of those stories. I mean, it's, Nana never served in the war or anything, but her life was remarkable, and I think that the story is universal about growing older. And those two things, between Susan saying, publish it, and what Jack had said, that was what really led me to say, I want to get this out there to a large audience.
Interesting in that the key, from what you just said, is that Jack said, it's stories that should be told. Somehow you took that same thought. It's a story about Nana that should be told.
Exactly.
I got you.
Yeah. She, her life was not remarkable in the sense that, she's never in public office, she was never served in the military, but she fought her own battles. And she came here from Nova Scotia, Canada, when she was only 17 years old to work. And she fought a lot of battles during her life, just as a woman in that time period, because we're talking about 1919 or so, as a single mother later on, and it was actually pretty remarkable, her entire life, and it was a story I just felt should be told. She should be remembered.
So there's a lesson going around in your mind, I would gather, that basically said that she did a lot of things, like she had to be under anxiety. She had, you come in from another country, you don't know all of the idioms and all aspects of the language. You don't know the customs. You don't have a circle of friends that you grew up with and what have you. And she had to fight these battles, and the battles of existence and accomplishment. But I guess that coupled with that, though, you could write that, but that isn't the whole story. The whole story must be the kind of discussions that you got into, and that she said some key things to you that affected your life from time to time.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm in the Foxboro JCs, and I'm very proud to be a member of that. I have to say that, but I am. I'm very, very proud to be in the JCs. The JCs actually read this book recently as their Book Club of the Month selection, and I got some wonderful feedback. Tom Whiffen, a good friend of mine in the JCs, he made an interesting comment. He said, "You call this book Nana," and he said, "The title really, you might want to make it Nana and Me." And we talked about that a bit, and I had to agree with him. I had actually thought about naming the book something like Nana or Me and My Life with Nana or whatever, and I just decided ultimately on Nana. But Tom brought up a good point, because really the catalyst for this book was not, I want to talk about everything Nana went through. I want to talk about my life with her, my experiences with her, what she meant to me. I mean, the history, where she came from, the life she led, certainly sets up for who and what she became later, the person she became. But it's very much our story. And I told Tom that. I said, you're right. It's very much it's not the biography of Anne Gillis. This is a lot of the times in her life Nana didn't talk about. There's about 10, 15 years I know nothing about in Nana's life. But it's much more our story, the relationship I had with her taking care of me, and then me taking care of her.
Tom is very perceptive because Nana by itself basically will not attract a lot of people to think about getting that book.
Right.
Because many people have had Nanas.
Sure.
I never did. The only grandparent I had was a grandfather. Out of 4 possibilities, all I had was one grandfather. But a lot of people say, Nana, yeah, I've had a Nana, but Tom, I think when the minute you say Nana and me, it opens the door to a lot of personal kind of words that were exchanged, and what he did for me or what I did for her. Of course, it was both going on at the same time. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about this. About the relationship and how it grew.
The relationship was unique. It really, I mean, from the start, someone else that I talked to about this book made the comment, you really visited her every day. You were so good to do that. And I heard that a lot when I was a kid, and it drove me crazy. It really did. Because it's like, especially when you're a kid, you don't want to be told, oh, you're so good or whatever. It's just, it was the obligation, the responsibility and the obligation to take care of her. What I didn't know at the time, when I was 5 years old, but I soon found out, and I wrestled with, this is an extremely personal story, and there were things in here that I literally agonized over putting in. And the two I'd like to talk about are, one, that Nana, like many of her generation, she had a drinking problem. And the funny thing was, when we would talk about it back then, you might say, oh, well, Nana had a drink. But I can look back on it now and say, well, Nana was an alcoholic. And part of the reason that I was being sent to the house every day was to keep an eye on Nana, was to make sure she was okay. And later on, that became, if she wasn't, if she had been drinking, would be, sorry, Nana, hiding the purse so she couldn't go out for more alcohol, or hiding the bottle if I found it so she would just fall asleep, because she was getting older and she couldn't drink. But what was remarkable is, as I grew older, Nana and I kind of came to an understanding about it. We never talked about it. We never, ever talked about it. But if she had been drinking, she knew that I had locked up her money, and I would give it back to her the next day. But she also knew I was taking care of her. And the other thing about Nana that I think makes this story remarkable is Nana was a single mother. And Charlie, this was the thing I agonized over putting in this book. And the reason was, my father did not know who his father was. And growing up, that was the big Gillis family secret. You did not talk about it. It was not talked about. Nana, did she marry or whatever? It was glossed over, but it was forbidden. You did not talk about it. And when I first wrote this book, it literally ended, one chapter ended sometime in the 1920s, and then the next chapter begins. Well, then Nana and her son moved into this house in Dorchester. And a very close friend of mine read it and said, this simply doesn't work. You have this huge gap of, and then a spaceship landed and whatever. You have an immaculate conception happening here, and it just doesn't work. So I had to talk about it. And it was very, very painful to do that. And I agonized about it, to put it in.
Sure.
But I finally said to myself, this is what happened. Nana, the story that Nana told was that she was in love, apparently for the only time in her life. And one night, she was dating this fireman or fire chief or something, and in her words, he took advantage of her. And what happened was, after she found out she was pregnant, he wanted nothing to do with her, nothing to do with the baby. Now, this is 1936. So it's not like today where you have 14-year-old kids that say, oh, look, I'm having a baby. This was 1936. But she kept my father, and she raised him. And I talk about the complexities of their relationship, and being a single mother, not from this country, although she became an American citizen in 42. And then she made the decision she was going to open up a business, a rest home in Dorchester. And she had to fight the neighbors for it, because the neighbors didn't want her to bring down the neighborhood by bringing in all these old people, whatever. And she said, the hell with you, and she did it anyway. That's what she was like. And she did that for 25 years. She was studying nursing. But in the book, I talk about that. I talk about how my father grew up and how unique that relationship was, and how it's almost like therapy, that going back and looking at how my dad grew up with her, how she grew up, now that they're both gone, I understand them both so much better. And I think part of the reason that I'm trying to get this book to other people is this is universal. I did not want to write a book about Nana that was, she liked to bake cookies or whatever. I mean, she made great gingerbread, but she never made cookies. But she was in no way the stereotypical cookie baking grandmother. She was a fiery woman. She liked her drink. She never took any crap from anybody. But she was tenacious, and she made her way in the world, and she did very well for herself. And that's some of the story I wanted to share.
Okay.
I think I got way off of the question you asked me, but
that happens because we're talking. But your mind is partially in the book.
Very much so.
Right now.
Yeah.
And you're trying to do. So let's do it this way. We can do it many ways, and we'll shift back and forth. Why don't you, in your mind, pick 3 items in that book somewhere.
Okay.
And it could be an item that's hinged with about 5 different little things with it, or it could be a single kind of thing, okay? But points. And let's say I'm a reporter, and I say to you, in fact, I'm a reporter for the publishing world, and I say, give me 3 reasons why somebody should read this book.
Okay.
What would you say?
I would say this. I have a dear childhood friend, Peggy Aquino. Her mother just passed away. She's a little younger than I am. She was visiting our house recently, and I gave her a copy of this book. She sat in the hospital with her mother as her mother lay dying and as her mother died. And she said that reading about Nana and the way that I kind of kept vigil with Nana, it helped her realize that, one, this is universal, but it provided her comfort. And it was the first time that someone had reviewed my book and it brought me to tears. She said this book provided her comfort as her mother lay dying, because she realized how her mother died a little younger, certainly than Nana, but how universal it is and how you need to cherish people. That's something I emphasize a lot in the book, is that I realized at a young age how much I loved Nana. And it wasn't after she died that I said, oh man, I wish I had done such and such. There were no regrets except that she didn't live longer, because I mentioned this several times in the book, I cherished her while she was alive. I knew it. And that will be the second lesson, I think, in the book, is you need to cherish those around you, not just your senior citizens, but the people you care about. You need to cherish them. I mean, the majority of this book was written pre-9/11, but even listening to the radio on the way over here today, there's some pretty scary things happening, and you literally don't know some days if you're going to go out, to work and come back. You need to cherish the people that you love now, and you need to tell them that you love them. My own mother, I don't think an email or a phone call goes by ever that it doesn't end with "I love you." And the same with my sister, my wife, except when we're fighting. But then it's "I love you, I'll talk to you later." But I think the third thing that I would want to tell people, Mr. Publisher, is that senior citizens do not become useless as they become older. God bless her, Lorraine Garland, and I think unfortunately now that it's been almost 6 years since Lorraine and Stanley passed, I love them dearly. And unfortunately a lot of people who are moving into Foxboro now don't know the contributions that the Garlands and Jerry Rodman made to this community.
Right. And
it was my wife Susan who got me involved with Lorraine Garland with the food pantry, and that translated to helping out with the senior center. And I've always, with Nana, aunts and uncles that I've had, it was Susan that said, the senior center is, they want to build the senior center. They're in the Lewis School one year, they're in the Taylor the next, they're in a basement the next. the first piece I ever wrote for the Foxboro Reporter was a full-page column about why we need a senior center in Foxboro. And that's why, I mean, God rest their souls, I mean, I miss them terribly, but that's why, you know, every Christmas, every November, you'll see me at the Senior Christmas Fair with Susan, you know, doing the hot dogs and the beans and everything. I love those folks. When the JCs do the Senior Appreciation Day or anything for seniors, I want to be part of that. I love senior citizens, and that would be the fourth message in the book. You only asked for three, but I'll give you more than you
Let's just keep it going.
You just keep it going. Is
Sure.
They've already been there. To use the been there, done that metaphor,
Yeah.
they've already been there and done that. They've lived it. You see a lot of these people, and they're 80 years old, 90 years old, and so many people dismiss them. They've been there. These are the people who lived through the hard times, lived through the greatest wars, really struggled. I mean, you look outside this studio, you can't tell there's a war on in Iraq or whatever now, but you know,
Right.
that generation did, and they sacrificed and they suffered. And I talk a little bit about that in the book. These people have had these experiences, and their stories need to be told. You need to ask them about it. So that's four.
You absolutely are on target in many, many different respects. Let me just go with you on one. It needs to be told, and I think I'll give you a few examples, and that is, I know someone, probably 25, 28 years old, and this person laments the problems of not having enough money to do the kind of things that they may want to do. Okay. And I happened to be part of a conversation, two or three of us were with him. He was telling us this. And it wasn't something that just happened this particular day. This has been true for a year or more, okay? And it leads you to the point, 2 points. One is, why haven't you done something about it before?
Right.
What we did, and we went through this, okay? We went through it. We'd go out and get a second job, a third job, a fourth job.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Whatever it took, we
worked.
We worked.
You were willing to work. You wanted to work.
We worked because because
exactly.
we knew we had to make it happen.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And the interesting thing is, I remember telling this person, I said, what do you pay for your apartment? Oh, $1,100. I said, that's great. And I said, you know, you're saying you don't have any money. Well, why can't you get an $800 one or a $600 one? Yeah. I said, I was out in Chicago, and I'd gotten out of the service, and basically only just had a few bucks, and I had a car. That's all I had. I went to work for Western Electric, nice big company. And I soon discovered I couldn't stay in the apartment. I couldn't afford it. Yeah. So I lived in my car for a month, okay? Yeah. And that was my home. That's where I slept. That was the whole thing. And I'm looking at him. He doesn't seem to get it, you know.
You get that deer in the headlights look. They don't understand at all, this generation.
Exactly. No. And there's a lot of seniors who have, as you said, fought the battles. Okay, one could be finance. It could have been a romance that didn't turn out. It could have been acceptance. It could have been health. It could have been anything. But
sure.
They fought the battles. Okay, I'll never forget. I came across an article one day about in Boston a family by the name of Sullivan. This is World War II material I was reading.
Sullivan Brothers?
Yeah, Sullivan Brothers. They sent the Sullivan Brothers off to war. I don't know whether there's 5 of them or...
There was 5.
5 of them.
Yeah.
They all died.
Yeah.
They all died. This mother lost 5 sons.
There's been poems written about her. There's been songs. Your boys, Mrs. Sullivan, they are coming home and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And you talk about the kind of things they had to go through. And it's interesting in that Foxboro Cable Access now has a show by the Washingtons, and Mrs. Washington gave birth to a child when she was 14, and she had to raise that child. And it changed her life.
Oh, yeah.
It has to. And I know some single mothers and what they're going through. They come home at night, they take off their outer raincoats or whatever. They got to start preparing a meal, and then they got to get the kids lined up to do homework, the whole bit. So Interesting. So all of this reflects back on the coming generation, and I think they've got to read some of this kind of thing. And if that's in your book, I think it's going to help a lot of people to say, wait a minute, I got to get going. And one thing I personally advocate is you got to start taking responsibility for your own health.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it's very, very important. You got to do it. And I guess I'm known as a person who has written a book too on rid yourself of diabetes.
The diabetes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. But it can be done.
Yep.
Because I've done it. And there was a gentleman out in Colorado. He cured himself of cancer.
I've heard stories like that.
It's been done.
Yeah.
It's been done. It can be done. But part of it gets back to believing in yourself, believing that you're worthwhile and you're this and you're that. So as you were going through your relationship with Nana, okay, you developed over a period of years, and you were changing, and she had to be changing.
Absolutely.
Can you reflect on those kind
Sure.
of changes and what they meant to you? In your life?
Yeah, there were a couple periods I can think of, and first of all, I think it was, well, it was funny because when I was in high school, I was selling papers for the Globe, because that was I was in front of Woolworths in downtown Boston for 3 years, and as someone once said about selling papers in the winter in Boston, it'll teach you character, and it did. But I treasured it because I met a lot of interesting people, and I was very shy. I know a lot of people in Foxboro don't believe that, but I was very, very, very shy as a teenager, and it helped me to talk to people. But I would visit Nana after that. I would take the train back to Dorchester, and I would visit Nana after that. When I was in college, I would, after my classes for the day, I would go visit Nana. If I was going out with my friends or if I had a date on Friday night, Nana got visited first, or my friends would pick me up at Nana's house because they knew that's where I'd be. I think there were two really, I think, significant periods, and the first was that around the time I got what I call my first real job as a computer guy, I was around 1987, 1988. I was working in Billerica, doing the Foxboro to Billerica commute, which is horrific on a good day and not so nice on the snowy. But I wasn't arriving in Nana's house until about 6 or 7 at night, so I started making her dinner. And I found that I really, really enjoyed that. And I asked my mom, who took care of Nana also for many years and took care of Medicaid and the shopping. I said, can you start picking up more food? Different things I can make Nana. So one night it might be steak, another night it might be chops or whatever. But Nana really enjoyed it because now I wasn't just coming down, giving her the paper and chatting with her, but we were sitting having a meal together. And that was really nice. We looked forward to that. And I remember a lot of nights she'd say, oh, Bobby, I wish you lived with me. I wish, we could do this all the time, whatever. But for me, it was wonderful because we were able to do this every night. And I think that was a wonderful period that I really cherished because it was like quality time with her. She wasn't always upbeat. As I mentioned right on the cover of the book, she could be gloomy. With a lot of people, she was melancholy. There are a lot of folks in the family who remember her as very melancholy. She wasn't upbeat. But we had this connection. And I don't know what it was because it was funny. Sometimes my mother would say, well, geez, Nana was really melancholy. She was really down. But she wouldn't be that way with me. She'd be a little more chipper with me, a little more talkative. And I don't know what it was, but we had this connection. The second period I think that I really think of was in 1989, she fell and she broke her hip. And it actually, part of it kind of makes for a very funny story because I went to visit her. It had been extremely windy that day, and it was the day before Thanksgiving. She opened the door and basically flew out of her hand. She fell forward. She broke her hip. Now, I'm down there that night. It's about 7 or 8 o'clock. I'm saying, Nana, I really think you broke your hip. You need to go to the hospital. Well, she started arguing with me. And I'm not going to, it's in the book, and I don't think I can say it even on cable television, but she made it very clear that she was not going to the hospital. She used a couple of adjectives to describe the hospital, but she was not, and she started pounding her, I am not going to any hospital. So as I put in the book, I appealed to a higher authority, and I called my mother. And I said, Mom, please come down here. We got to get Nana to the hospital. Well, her hip was broken. And it was at that point, unfortunately, she needed to get some more attention. Now, the hospital, after a month of rehabilitation, put her into a nursing home. This is not the nursing home she died in. At this point, Nana was only 87 years old, and I had a long talk with my mother. My father had since passed away, and we were taking care of her. And I said, it's not time for Nana to be in a rest home. It's not time yet. She's still articulate. You know, she's going to recover from this. She's going to be all right. And my mother said, all right, well, I'll tell you what, let's give it some time. And Charlie, as it turned out, it took exactly one night. Called up the next day and found out that Nana woke up in the middle of the night at the rest home. I don't put the name of the rest home, by the way, in the book, the first one, because it was only my, you know, I don't want to make any judgments about it. But it was in Dorchester, but it's not the one she died in. But anyway, one of the staff members, Nana woke up in the middle of the night. She wasn't unruly or anything. She just didn't know where she was. She was confused. Where am I? Where am I? Well, the nurse told her to shut up, and she tied her to a chair.
Tied her?
Tied her to a chair. So my mother told me about this the next day, and I said, we're getting her out of there. That's it. I said, call the doctor. We're getting her out of there. Someday Nana's going to have to go to a rest home, but not yet. So my mother made a lot of phone calls, and she said, you know, I think Anne can take care of herself, etc. I went down there, and Charlie, I'll never forget this. It was this terribly snowy day, and Nana was in this big sea of wheelchairs watching television. I just walked over to her, and I just leaned close to her, you know, big smile on her face, and I said, I'm taking you home. And the look on her face, I will never forget that. It was just amazing. And the doctor checked her out and said, you know, do you think you can take care of yourself? And she said, yes. And I took her home that night. And she took care of herself for about another 2.5 years that she lived on her own and for the most part flourished. For the most part she did well. But I often think of that period, because you'd asked me, you know, your initial question was, you know, different periods, and I certainly think of that period. It was like an extra gift from God. It was like extra time with Nana. And it meant that, you know, before she had to go in a rest home for real, that was a very precious time to me.
It was quality time, too.
It was enormously quality time. I had been doing repairs around the house for years, wallpapering, painting. At that point, I stopped doing that. And I mentioned in the book that at that point I realized the time was precious, and I didn't want to be upstairs in Nana's house wallpapering a bedroom or a bathroom. I wanted to be sitting with her, and I was listening a lot more intently to the stories now. I was asking her. She'd say, you know, John Alec, and I'd say, your brother John Alec, or, you know, the cousin from Judah, whatever. I was asking clarification questions. I was trying to understand the family tree better, how she grew up, etc. I really recognized that I knew the time was limited, and I was really trying to, you know, milk it for all I could. I wanted to squeeze every last drop out of that time. So that particular period, you know, before she went into the second rest home, was very precious to me.
Now, if you had to come up with some messages, we could summarize part of this into messages. Would you basically say, don't treat your relationships lightly with anybody?
Right.
Not necessarily your family, but your friends and so on. And relationships have a way of diminishing over a period of time, for lack of contact, and maybe lack of interest. And would you say it's all too easy for you and me and everybody to get very busy in a career or whatever. I mean, you write for the Foxboro Reporter. You're also a computer something or other, whatever.
Computer guy.
Yeah, computer guy, as you say. But you're saying relationships are very, very important.
Yes.
And you took this kind of thinking in your mind, and you've tried to develop it. You developed it, you know, with the JCs. You developed it in many other ways. That's got to be at least one of the strong messages that you're trying to get across to our community who's tuned in here tonight. And if, you know, listening to you talk, I mean, I think a lot of them might say, geez, you know, I haven't talked to Bill in a long time or whatever. And you may talk to some people, but they're moving out there somewhere. There's
right.
no intimate connection here.
Exactly, and they're letting them slip away. Another friend of mine, she's also in the JC's, Wendy, she read the book also, and she said that she has a grandmother in Stoughton, and she hadn't talked to her in some time. And she sent me an email, and she said, I'm writing you through my tears. And Wendy's a sweetheart. She and her family just moved to Foxboro, and they're wonderful people, and they're great asset to the JCs. She wrote to me, I want you to know, because of this, I'm going to see, I think it's Nana Helen, and I hope I'm right about that. I'm going to see Nana Helen on Saturday. I'm bringing the kids for no other reason but to have a cup of tea with her. And I got an email from Wendy the following Sunday. Just so you know, I saw Nana Helen yesterday. and she says it was because of your book. And I thought that was wonderful. That message I thought was fantastic. You know, Charlie, it sounds, I swear that I'm not being, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not being insincere here. I love being a member of the JCs. I've been a JC now 13 years, and the group has evolved and it's changed. I love what the group stands for. I love what the group is capable of and the good we do in this community. I love being part of that. I love helping out occasionally at the senior center. You know, I love it when someone comes up to me and says, your column made a huge difference. You know, not everything I write for the Reporter is intended to be life-changing, you know, certainly, but I wrote a very therapeutic piece a couple of years ago about my dad's alcoholism, and what I entitled it "The Paradox of Two Dads." And my dad died of cancer when he was only 47. I'm 41 now, and even when he died when I was 19, that still seemed pretty young. And as I approach 47, I'm very conscious of it. But he was very much two different people. He was the father who adored me, who told me he loved me constantly, but when he was drunk, he was mean. He was, you know, he was never physically abusive or whatever. He was just mean. He was a mean man when he drank. And for many, many years, I kind of struggled with that. You know, how do you reconcile that? How do you deal with that? And I wrote a column about it, actually, and it was about a friend of mine who I knew was an alcoholic and who was having a terrible time. And I mentioned him in the column, although not by name. And I basically said that, you know, he had been sober for some time, and I mentioned how wonderful that was or whatever. And I saw the guy, and he gave me a hug, and he said, that column made such a difference, and, you know, thank you for writing. And I said, you know, you're doing all the work, you know, I think that's wonderful. So if I can get that kind of message across, that's absolutely thrilling. I mean, Jeff Peterson, who's the editor of the Reporter, you can tell I'm plugging everyone in this interview, but Jeff Peterson, you know, very kindly 10 years ago let me start writing for the paper, and you know, what I'm putting out is not Shakespeare every week, and there's some that I read that I wrote and I said I really like this, and there's one every now and then I'll just say, I'm so glad I wrote that. I want to share the story. And sometimes it was a story of Nana, sometimes it was some crazy experience my wife and I had, or just some observation of life. But it's so wonderful to be able to share that, because so many of these things are universal. And then you have people coming back saying, you know, because I read this that you wrote, I went out and did this. You know, if as a JC, if someone comes up to us and says, you know, because of all the good stuff you do, I'm going to do something good in my community. Or if someone comes to me and says, because of what you wrote, I'm going to go do such and such, or whatever, or I'm going to donate to the discretionary fund or the food pantry. I'm really getting all the plugs in here. This is amazing. Who haven't I covered yet? Primos. I like their sandwiches. But that's wonderful. That's an enormous benefit. This is not the next Da Vinci Code. My wife Susan, she keeps saying, don't say that. I said, no, I'll settle for half those sales. But I want to get the story out there. I want to share that story.
Because it's going to help people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People getting older, having to I have a very dear friend of mine, a very dear friend, and her husband is dealing now with his mother, who's very ill. And she's developing Alzheimer's, and she's developing Parkinson's. And I feel very bad, because I was telling her, I've been there. And you feel, in a way, like you failed this person, because you want to be the one to go take care of her. And even for me, that was horrible, because I was like, I can't be the one taking care of Nana every day. My mother can't be the one taking care of Nana every day. And the message that I'm trying to give her, to tell him, is you're not failing by looking for extra care for your mom or needing to put your mom in a home, because she needs that care. That's not a failure. And that, Charlie, that's universal. We'll all at some point have someone we have to take care of.
Going along with what you just said is something else that maybe we can enlarge upon, and that is we all learn from each other. So it's more than just relationship, hi, how are you? We learn from each other, and we really do. There's somebody in my acquaintance, when I ask a question and I'm looking for this, they give me this. And the first thing is, they start telling me all they know about it until they finally get it. But by the time they've told me all they know about it, until finally I get closer to getting the real answer, I've tuned it out.
You don't remember the question at that point. Exactly.
I don't want to deal with that.
Right.
I'll give you one example. At one time in Washington, D.C., I was giving a presentation to an admiral. That was part of my career. And about 3/4 of the way through, he asked me a question, and I proceeded to tell him all I knew about it. My boss, he was a senior vice president of a large company, GT&E, he said, "Charlie, please answer the admiral's question, and then, if he wants to, tell him all the additional material that you could add to that." And I've used that example. I said, I used to do it. You don't think about what you're doing.
It's true.
You just don't think.
Yeah.
You ask the question, how far did Ted Williams' last home run go at Fenway Park? Where did the ball land?
Well, Charlie, Ted Williams was born in such and such a place
Yeah,
many
right.
years ago.
he had 510 home runs on it.
Exactly.
He finally got to the last one at Fenway Park.
What was my question again?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So that's important, and we learn from each other. And I'll give you one other example in a different way, and then perhaps there's something that'll come to your mind. And that is that I came out of the service and I had a job, and as I told you, then I came east, and until I got the kind of job I really wanted to get, and this was all leading up to going to college. And I had some time, and one of my spare jobs was delivering groceries in a pickup truck. It was the thing that the grocery store was known for. This lady would call in, order would put up, Charlie would deliver it. And I delivered it to this one lady, and I'm carrying up the groceries and so on, and I come back and down. She said, "Is this what you want to do for the rest of your life?" I said, "No." "Well, what do you want to do?" "Well, I want to go to MIT." "You want to go to MIT? Why do you want to go to MIT?" "Because it's the best school in the country, but I just don't think I could ever go to MIT." She said, 4 years from now, how many will be graduating? I said, "About 450. "Why can't you be one of the 450?
Exactly.
Bingo.
Yep.
That changed my life, because I decided I was going to go, and I did go. And I had 4 wonderful years there, and it propelled me onto, talking to admirals, for example.
Yeah,
so what
absolutely.
kinds
and
of
town office here.
What kind of lessons, or what kind of information, or what kind of just thoughts did you get from Nana that you felt were instrumental later on in your life?
Work ethic, certainly.
Work ethic?
Absolutely work ethic, because it's funny, you mentioned, delivering the orders in the pickup truck, and I did that. And my father worked in a grocery store for many years, and it was, with the Dorchester accent, it was the order. We're going to pick up the order and bring it over to Water Street. But we did that for many years. I wanted to work when I was about 10 years old. I was very frustrated that I couldn't find a job when I was 10. When I was 11, I started going to the grocery stores. "Please, I want to work. I'll sweep the floors," or whatever. The first job that I could work was selling papers for the Globe.
Do you think you got that from Nana?
I got that from Nana, and I got that from my mother and my father. They all taught me that if you want something, you work for it. Charlie, this generation right now has been called the entitlement generation, because they want the I saw the kid, no lie, I saw a kid the other day in Walmart who said to his father, "Dad, I want," this exact quote, "Dad, I want these sneakers, they're only $150. I would have never said anything even remotely like that when I was a kid. I would work for those sneakers. I wanted my first tape recorder when I was 10 years old. I saved up for it for the entire summer, $20. And then my mother took me to Lechmere to buy it with my own money. Nana worked extremely hard, probably too hard all her life. But my father worked very hard too, as long as he could, to support us. My mother has always worked hard. My sister works hard. It's an ethic in my family. I was, for the first time in my life, I was laid off from a job about 2 months ago, and was no reflection on me. The job basically got outsourced to Virginia, and my boss was very sad about it, and he told me, we never saw this coming, or neither did I. But my immediate thought was, okay, the bills need to be paid, I need to find work. But the second thing, even beyond that, was I need to work. I have to work. And Susan was fantastic and supportive, because it could have been terrible and I could have fallen apart, but I didn't. She was very supportive. But more than once she said to me, I know how much you need to work. You need to work. And I was very fortunate. I found a new job very quickly. But I love that. I love getting up in the morning. I love working. I love that feeling of accomplishment, and certainly I got a lot of that from Nana. I got a lot of, there's a lesson in that the goals that Nana set out for herself, she worked for them. She would often say that. She'd say, I don't think that's in the book, but she'd often say, I worked for this house. No one gave me this house. I worked for what I have. And it's funny, Susan, every now and then we'll look at what we've achieved in 10 years that we've owned in Foxboro. We've lived here 15 years. And she'll say, oh, this is really nice or whatever. And I always remind her, I always say, we worked hard for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember the day we built, you know, such and such. I remember the day that we cleaned that or we painted that or whatever. You work hard for it. And for me, there's joy in that. There really is.
Sure.
I enjoy that work.
Okay, that's one very good example. What else? What else in your relationship with Nana seemed to be a kind of a key thing that formed the way that you thought about certain things or did certain things, set certain values in your head or whatever?
I think Nana was very big on family, on the whole family concept. I mean, she was one of initially 11 and then 9, well, 2 died, 9 brothers and sisters, and she wasn't close to all of them by any means. But Nana always emphasized that it's your family that matters the most. And Nana, in some ways, almost took a family against the entire world approach, which I don't subscribe to, but just that you need to take care of the family. You know, when my mother and father were first married, money was very tight. And my mother's mother, as well as Nana, at different times, you know, showed up at the door with a box of food. And Nana would say, I accidentally ordered 2 of everything. Or, you know, it's not charity, I ordered 2 of everything by mistake or whatever. But it was always taking care of the family. And there was that bond. I think so. Certainly that would be the second thing that I took from Nana, is a very, very strong sense of family. I mean, certainly the work ethic comes to mind immediately, but very much a very strong sense of family.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What else would you like to talk about?
Let me see. Well, I hope, I'd ask that anyone who reads the book would let me know about it. The book has a website. It's www.nannagillisbook.com.
Now let's say that again
Okay.
slowly.
www.nana, N-A-N-A, Gillis, G-I-L-L-I-S, book, B-O-O-K.com. And it's a website I created myself, and you can buy the book. You can read excerpts from the book. There's pictures of Nana. A couple people said, you know, why aren't there pictures in this? And I said, well, there's cost involved, and I don't know how many copies this will sell, but there's a lot of pictures of Nana there. There's a tribute to my father. And there's, Charlie, this is the amazing part. I've been contacted now from people from Canada and from over the United States who read this, and I'm related to. I have heard Nana had a brother named Neil. Neil's grandson, who I've never heard of, contacted me and emailed me a while back. He said that the pictures on the website of his grandfather are the only ones he's ever seen, and he loved the book.
Wow.
So I'd like people, please check it out. It's on Amazon.com, it's on Barnes & Noble, NanaGillisBook.com. There's reviews. I did a book signing, my first, a couple of weeks ago. I'd love it if people read it, but and my email address is in the back of this book too, along with the website. And I would ask people, if you liked it, if you hated it, contact me, send me an email. I want to hear from you. Let me know if it helped you, if it changed your life, or if it just made you smile. That's what I'd like people to do.
Well, I think we've learned a lot. My intuitive feeling was to learn a lot about you and who you are and what you are.
Did you?
You're a talent, yeah. You're a very talented person.
Well, thank you.
And the book is the book. And the fact that you wrote it is enough for me, that I'm going to go and I'm going to go read it.
I want to know what you think of it afterward.
I'll let you know what I think about it afterwards.
Please do.
Okay.
Please do.
But it's interesting in that it represents a lot of work. I mean, you accumulated it all, but you had to put it all together.
Absolutely.
And you had to make some sense to you. Now, what you had to do, I would think, if you're going to have that book out where it can impact the largest number of people, you've got to figure out who you want to get the book.
Right.
Have you done that?
Yes.
And what's the answer to that?
The answer is yes, I have. The book is published through a company called Author House in Indiana.
Oh, I'm very familiar with them.
You are.
Oh, yeah.
And they are fantastic. They have treated me extremely well, and I'm part right now of the extended promotion. And the book, the press release for the book, which is also on the website, you can read it or Google it, has been sent to every major book realtor in the Hartford, Boston, and Providence areas. And then I've just completed the second tier of that, which is sending the press release to 5 new areas. And I targeted, in answer to your question, specifically populations with a high senior citizen population. Orlando, Florida, Tampa, Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida, and Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, where Nana came from. The press release has gone to all those outlets as well. And that actually went out about a week or 2 ago, so I got a request for a radio interview that I'm doing next week, and a book signing that I did a few weeks ago, Barnes & Noble in Bellingham, which is, it's extraordinary. It's very humbling, but it's absolutely extraordinary. But I'm trying to promote it also with the website, telling people about it, and really trying to do a lot of internet promotion. This is not a book right now you're going to find in every Barnes & Noble or Borders, but it's very available across the internet, and I'm hoping to get it to stores later.
Yeah, it takes a lot for an Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Borders, and Walmart to really get interested in the book.
Yes.
Okay. One thing that you may want to do is think about book fairs, by the way. And like there's one in Frankfurt, Germany, and
I don't travel that far.
you don't have to. You send the book.
Really?
You just stay right here.
Really?
And there's one in Beijing, China. You send the book, and they put it there.
And they'll put it at the book fair?
But they have a book fair started last year.
I had no
first
idea about
time
that.
ever.
No, that's great.
And there's one going on in Washington, D.C. in a couple of weeks. Whether you can get in on that one or not, you look up on Google, look for the words "combined exhibit."
Combined exhibit?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I think I'm familiar with that. I have to check that out. But
yeah. And that could help. Again, you have to consider. You've already started what is known as a niche market. One of the niches is Nova Scotia.
Certainly. Yeah.
This is all you as compared to somebody else trying to promote a book.
Right.
Okay. But you might think of libraries, and libraries are a big market. And when you think of libraries, because a lot of seniors read, and that's part of your niche market is seniors. Also, if you can think of the right promo, you could go to what is called the baby boomers, and that's why I say lessons to be learned, and list them, and get direct mail somehow to somebody somehow. And then say,
there's a lot of options for that, for direct mail.
Yeah, and then say, this book will help some of your thinking along that. Well, okay, what I want to do now is we're heading towards the finish line.
It went by fast.
It did go by fast.
It went by very fast.
It always seems so.
Yeah.
1 hour goes real fast.
You've made it easy.
I'd like you to think of what you may want to lay on the table as really key things that you want somebody seeing this show to walk away with it. And then I'll summarize it, and we'll call the show, because we're getting to that point where we must have about maybe 5 minutes or less of the show.
There's people frantically waving over my head.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
I think that people watching the show, first of all, I'm enormously grateful for all of this. This has been extraordinary, because my initial intention was, I wrote this for myself. This evolved into a book. This was just a file on the computer of memories of Nana, and it evolved into that. And when it became something, when I started reading Tuesdays with Maury or other books like that talked about, cherishing someone, especially someone older, and the words of Jack Othlet, I wanted to get that book out there. And I would just say, The book itself, it's an easy read. It's about 180 pages, but it's a story that I read the book a couple of weeks ago on the commuter rail over a couple of days back and forth from Boston, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as a reader. I enjoyed it as, obviously I'm extremely familiar with it, and I enjoyed it as a reader, and I would hope that people will find it. I hope that people will check it out and buy it. It is at Boyden Library. I gave them a copy. But I hope that people will check it out, because I think this book, I think that either you'll see some of yourself in it, or some of your life situation, or it might be just that little tickle in the brain or the kick in the pants to say, you know, your grandfather or your grandmother's not going to be around forever. You better start cherishing them now. There are too many things that I think go unsaid. And I think too many people, another friend of mine just lost someone very young, and she told me that, you know, she wished she told them such and such or whatever, but she told them all those things. And you need to do that. So I think that's what I would leave it with, is I hope you will enjoy the book. The feedback is tremendously important. Some people, I think, have read the book and I haven't heard back from them. And if you didn't like the book, tell me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Mm-hmm. I want to know. I mean, I've had people approach me and say, I completely disagree with what you wrote in the Reporter last week. Well, that's wonderful. Because, well, it's not wonderful, but it's good because, well, it means that they read it. They read it, and it sparks something in them. And conversation is wonderful. Healthy debate is wonderful. And I would just, even if you didn't like it, tell me why. You know, if you found a truth in there, or if it changed your life in some way, tell me. I want to know. I really do. People say, when's the next one coming out? Well, this one took about 5 years to write and quite some more time to publish, so keep reading the Reporter, because that's about all the writing for a while there. And check out nannagillisbook.com, and there's links there to other websites I have with my writing on there. And also, Charlie, before we go to, I have to put in one other plug, because I didn't put it in earlier. The Doolittle Home. We had the auction here a couple of weeks ago, and right. I plugged everyone else, including Primos. I have to plug the Doolittle Home. They are wonderful. I wish when Nana was alive, I was living, in Foxboro and was in a position for her to go there. Doolittle Home is a fantastic place, doing a lot of good in Foxboro, and they have a website too. It's doolittle-home.org. It's spelled exactly like that. Check that out. Jack Othla told me that he's got some first contacts from people whose first experience with Doolittle was that website. So check it out. I have to plug Doolittle, because if I don't, in a book about a senior citizen, if I don't talk about Doolittle, I'm going to get hit in the head by Jack Othla. But I know I need to...
Okay. That's our show. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I, for one, am going to look forward to reading about Nana. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's good. It's good.